There's an old saying that says the ugliest thing a person can go through is a divorce. Clearly, the people who say that have never been through a trademark battle, where legalities and fine print take great hierarchy over what's right and wrong. In divorce, each party receives 50-50 of all assets, even if only one party did all the work and brought in all the money while their other half sat on the couch, one hand down their pants and the other in a Dorito bag. They still receive 50-50 split. Trademark ownership is much more cruel. Unlike divorce, when a trademark relationship goes wrong, especially in professional wrestling, it can be catastrophic. Even if one person is doing all the work. If a talent is trademark, it's the ownership of said trademark that'll receive all the rewards. Like is the case in WWE World Wrestling Entertainment, where owner Vincent Kennedy McMahon lives and breathes by the almighty trademark. If it were up to Mr. McMahon, every single person he has ever come across during his existence would have some letter with a circle around it. Whether it be a copyright, a register, a trademark, some type of McMahon stamp on your forehead just to show that he owns just a piece of you. VKM built his billion-dollar conglomerate off the backs of many professional wrestlers, busting their asses and breaking their backs so that Vinnie Mac can get richer. And sadly, and some would say tragically, when many talents leave, they won't be able to rest in the fruits of their labor. They won't see a whole lot of residuals from the years of hard work they put into the company. No, that'll be Vince McMahon collecting money off of their name long after they're gone from the company. And legally, he can do it. It's all legal, and it's all business for Vince. You see, the definition of trademark is a symbol, word, or words legally registered or established by use as representing a company or product. But for Vincent Kennedy McMahon, if he has a trademark on you, the definition is much shorter. I own you. Vince has gained his billions by being cutthroat and ruthless. Never more evident than recently when McMahon and other top execs knew they were about to report record revenue due to billion-dollar deals with Peacock, Fox, and other ventures. Yet despite business being better than ever, McMahon simultaneously released nearly 100 professional wrestlers from his roster and fired over 150 employees and staffers from the company at large. Vince is not one of those owners that thinks about or cares about the people below him that are doing all of the grunt work and heavy lifting, carrying the company literally on their shoulders. Vince is not an owner that thinks about or cares about the individual or their families or even their livelihoods. He only cares about squeezing as many pennies as he possibly can out of you. But he will not hesitate to throw you away like yesterday's newspaper. But more often than not, he will keep your name. Because he knows that while he doesn't see value in you, fans may think the opposite. Thus, Vinny will keep that trademark, keep that ownership on you just in case. You see, he knows that a lot of these wrestlers will be hurt without their ring name. That's their existence. To the public, everything they worked for and put into that character, that's everything to them. It's like stripping away their identity only to watch this old bastard in Stamford, Connecticut make bank on your blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah, you see, it's a lot worse than divorce, where even if you did all the work and your other half did jack shit, you're still keeping half of everything. No, in Vince's world, if he has you trademark, he keeps 100%. He can kick you aside, but he can keep everything that you worked for by owning that name. Long after you're gone. You'd like to think that every once in a while, Vinny loosens up the reins on the asshole businessman shtick and shows some compassion. Does what's right for a change, but that's just not the case with VKM. Like in the situation of Cody Rhodes. While Cody's real last name is Runnels, the Rhodes last name holds great importance, meaning, and significance to Cody, a name emotionally deep-rooted in the history and legacy of his family. Vince knew this, yet when Cody left WWE several years ago, Vince didn't attempt to cancel the trademark. And what happened next would be beyond shady tactics even for Vince McMahon standards. You see, WWE had accidentally let the Cody Rhodes TM run out and lapse. Cody had been keeping an eye out on that TM just in case WWE would show some semblance of grace and respect. Maybe, just a little bit. So sure enough, Cody saw that it was available and he applied for the trademark. It was almost a done deal until Vince McMahon, WWE, and the Patent and Trademark Office came out of nowhere like an RKO and delivered a low blow to Cody. WWE had applied at the very last minute for a renewal, blocking Cody from obtaining that name. And sure enough, WWE was eventually able to cancel out Cody's application. And this was seen in the pro wrestling world as exceptionally low even for VKM standards. Feeling the heavy scrutiny from the public, WWE attempted a massive face turn when they canceled their own trademark on the Rhodes name. And after a tedious, nonsensical, lengthy battle, Cody Rhodes was Cody Rhodes again. Perhaps just as interesting in this whole saga is later that year, Cody Runnels was able to secure the trademark name of his father, Dusty Rhodes. It is unclear if WWE left the name up for grabs as a sign of good faith to Cody, or if WWE made the same mistake they did with Cody's name and accidentally let it lapse. But either way, it allowed Cody to give an ultimate fuck you to Vince, and I'm sure he took that moment to do such. Cody even went as far as to attempt several times to trademark his father's nickname, the American Dream, a name he also applied to his own character at times, ensuring the legacy of his father stays in the family. Unfortunately, after several rejections and the applications being denied, the trademark has since been abandoned. Talk of trademarks has never been hotter than it is currently in pro wrestling and in the community. The release of one of pro wrestling's biggest stars, Bray Wyatt, just last year had the entire community baffled. For one, how can a company lose a guy that creative and talented? But then fans are left with the realization that Wyndham Rotunda, the man who played Bray Wyatt, will never be able to use that name again, if not in a WWE ring. That's right, you guessed it, WWE owns that. And WWE is so petty that they even filed an extension for the Fiend character. A character that Bray Wyatt put an absurd amount of time, energy, creativity, and passion behind. And I say petty not just because WWE kicked this guy out the door and will continue to make bank from him. Again, business, we get it. But petty because if you look at the time frame of Wyatt's release, which was July of 21, and then you look at the extension filing for the Fiend trademark, you clearly see that's a full month after you released him. So Vince McMahon knew that there was still a lot of money to be made. So he had a file extension. That wasn't just the copyright or the trademark on Bray Wyatt. No, it's the extension on the trademark of the Fiend as well, knowing that more merchandise was about to hit the shelves, that more Wyatt merchandise, more Fiend merchandise was going to be on WWE Shop. And what happened in the months following, and probably still to this day, Bray Wyatt Fiend merchandise is still selling. It's amazing. You can kick a guy to the curb, acting like he's not worth a damn anymore, but you definitely want his name. You want all the likeliness, you want all the copyright, you want all of that. Interesting. You'd like to think this trademark is solely for monetary gain, but there was rumors months ago that VKM was bringing Elias back as the Fiend. While that would be the most disrespectful act to Wyndham Rotunda and the lowest of acts by McMahon, I can't say for certainty that he wouldn't do something so pathetically atrocious. After all, we're talking about a guy that once paraded to the ring a new Razor Ramon, a new Diesel. 2, that's right, a second Undertaker. Another Fiend character? Unfortunately and sadly, that's right up Vince McMahon's alley. WWE superstar Mustafa Ali recently shocked the wrestling world by requesting his release from the company. And this left fans speculating, where does he end up? What matches is he gonna have? Those questions will remain unanswered for now, but the one thing we do know for sure is he will be in those places and he will be wrestling those matches without the Mustafa Ali name. That's right, you guessed it, Vince McMahon owns that name. And WWE actually denied Ali's request to be released, so if he was unhappy with the company before his request, one can make a safe assumption that he's furious with the company after being denied that request. My point? Well, maybe he'll want to get as far away from the Mustafa Ali name as possible. Now you may say, BC, I kind of knew that was coming. After all, Ali wasn't his real name, so you just knew Vince would retain full ownership of quote-unquote his creation. However, don't think for 1 second that just because your ring and character name matches your real name, that you're safe from BKM's greediness. Bobby Lashley recently found that out the hard way. Vince actually tried to trademark Bobby's name even though it's his real name. Now, upon further inspection, it's clear to see how Vince was going to try to navigate around this loophole. You see, Bobby's actual legal name is Franklin Roberto Lashley. Now, Lashley has always went by Bobby Lashley because, well, a dude like Lashley is not going to go by Franklin. On top of that, Roberto is Robert, and people named Robert usually go by Bobby. It's like Robert Roode, Bobby Roode. Roberts are usually Bobbies. So again, this is the dude's real name. But Vince sees these things as loopholes, and he pounces on them. Thankfully for Lashley, the trademark has been categorized as abandoned at last check. So my guess is Bobby saw this and saw what was happening and said, "Hold up, dude," and proceeded to rip Vince McMahon a new asshole. At least that's how I like to see it play out, man. I hope that Bobby caught this and was like, ain't gonna happen, not on my watch, or I'm walking. This situation is probably what scared big wrestling free agent Keith Lee shitless. Lee not only filed for his old nickname Limitless, but he even TM'd his actual name. That's right, Keith Lee is the dude's name, but he probably saw what was happening to Lashley and so many others that he didn't want to leave anything to chance, so he even trademarked that shit, man. Now, the downside to all of this is that WWE still has the name Bearcat fully trademarked in its arsenal. They didn't bother to cancel it out or anything. Vince McMahon is sitting on that trademark, Bearcat. So don't be shocked if sometime down the line, some poor soul finds his way into WWE and becomes a Bearcat. That trademark is still fully ready to rock for Vince McMahon. Now, I could do you one better. The truth is, it doesn't matter if your ring name is letter for letter a match to your birth certificate. Vince will still try to trademark you somehow. Even long after you're gone from the company or are pursuing other ventures and opportunities. And this is precisely the case with John Cena. Contrary to many's beliefs, Cena is actually trademarked by WWE, and credit to Vince, because he did it in a way, while gigantically fucked up, it was also ruthlessly brilliant, because the trademark was filed under the category of toys, goods, and services. From action figures to skateboards, puzzles to kites, cards to Christmas tree decorations, and everything in between. So basically, if John Cena and Vince McMahon ever had a falling out, and John Cena actually went to another promotion for any appearances or matches, that promotion could never really market him the way they'd like to. They'd lose out on a sizable revenue intake and have an incomplete return on investment. Because you couldn't put this guy's name on anything unless he would just go by maybe Cena, right? Because it is his real name. Maybe the trademark is just the full name, and just like Cody did when he went over to AEW, maybe he can just go by Cena and just leave the John out. I don't know. Maybe he'll just go by John. Either way, man, Vince McMahon found a way where once you take away the goods and services, especially the toy category, that basically, you could say that's everything. I mean, Vince McMahon can have his lawyers say that anything would fall under that category. The bottom line here, guys, is that even though it's under one category, that trademark name on John Cena, it affects everything. Because the other company now cannot market you. It's actually, I'll say the same thing I just said. At the same time that it's gigantically fucked up, it's ruthlessly brilliant to have that type of a fucking trademark. This is almost the same thing that happened to The Rock, but The Rock got screwed over even more by Kennedy McMahon, I feel. That's right, being a top Hollywood juggernaut doesn't make you immune to McMahon's evil ways. The Rock name is absolutely trademarked by World Wrestling Entertainment. And again, Vince found the perfect way to file. It was under goods and services, but not toys. No, that's for Cena, who clearly is marketed for kids. But for Rock, it was for use on computer programs, cinema, TV, tapes, recordings, you name it. But The Rock was a bit smarter. He started going by Dwayne Johnson after a while. That wasn't just because they wanted to get away from his wrestling shtick. No, that was also because they know we can make more money if you're just Dwayne Johnson. So he started going by that moniker, that name, his actual name, and he made sure that he had full control over that motherfucker. He was like, Vince, you are not getting Dwayne Johnson. But to this day, people like John Cena and people like The Rock, they're still under trademarks for World Wrestling Entertainment. They're still kind of under the threshold of Vince McMahon. That's how hard it is to get out of these things. No matter how powerful or successful you become in his company, he still will have a stronghold over you. Even Shayna Baszler, whose real name is Shayna Baszler, is at the mercy of Vince McMahon, and WWE holds a full trademark on her name. Unlike Cena and The Rock, who have specific categories within the trademarks, Baszler's trademark is for the full spectrum of pro wrestling and entertainment, so that's going to be a lot harder to get out of. Baszler was at least smart enough to grab her nickname, though, before WWE got it. That's right, Baszler holds the trademark for Queen of Spades. Good for her. You gotta believe this was a case of try and retrieve everything and anything you think you created before they get it. That's what it was a case of. But good for her, man, because nicknames are becoming just as important as the actual name. That's why people like Keith Lee feel the need to trademark Limitless. And that's why Vince McMahon does trademark names like Bearcat, because he knows value in it. I mean, nobody else sees the value in Bearcat. Vince sure as hell went for it. But nicknames hold a lot of value. That's why for the longest time, Randy Orton tried to get the name Legend Killer. But WWE would not release that trademark over to him, man. They were not going to abandon that trademark. And up until recently, at last check anyway, it's actually finally been canceled. Maybe Vince now sees Randy Orton having scooter races and spelling bees and trivia quizzes. So maybe he's thinking there's not going to be a Legend Killer anytime soon. He's not going to want that name. Nobody's going to spend money on this trash. I'm going to sit on it for a while. So as of now, as of last check, Legend Killer remains unowned in the registry. But for a while, man, Orton did want that shit. But for Shayna Baszler, going back on that for a second, you gotta wonder, at the same time that she was trying to help her cause, in case she ever gets good booking and strikes it hot, the Queen of Spades, man, she owns that, and she's gonna get great value in that. But at the same time that she was trying to help herself, I wonder if she simultaneously hurt herself. Because you gotta believe Vince McMahon knows that he cannot obtain that nickname, Queen of Spades. You gotta believe that Vince McMahon and his lawyers know that Shayna went and did that. So is Vince purposely now not going to book her good? I mean, she's already had shitty booking. Does it get even worse? Because Vince now knows that he can't let her become a star because she owns the fucking nickname. I'm telling you, you got to think. I know this seems petty, and it is, and that's exactly how Vince thinks. You got to think sometimes, how would Vince think about this situation? And it's already bad enough that he's admitted he doesn't want to build new stars because he's afraid that they'll basically take their ball and run away like an Ultimate Warrior did, or a CM Punk, or a Stone Cold Steve Austin, and leave the company pretty much high and dry, and leaving Vince McMahon in a vulnerable state, vulnerable position. So he doesn't want to create larger-than-life stars anymore. if he's not hand-picking them and crafting them like a Roman Reigns, Joe Anoa'i, or a Charlotte Flair, Ashley Flair. So you add on top of that they're starting to own their own names or nicknames, and he's definitely not going to want to push you. But these wrestlers always have to remember that Vince doesn't just want your name. He'll trademark your nickname, your dog's name, your best friend's name. He's a power-hungry, greedy, evil old man. Now, speaking of real names and how that's always a slippery slope for Vince to navigate through to ultimately get to what he wants, Johnny Gargano is another interesting case. It's actually his real name. Almost, anyway. He's listed as John Gargano. So obviously Vince pounced all over this like a seething pit bull ready to pounce on a pile of steak. Sure enough, Vince has a full trademark on Gargano. This is interesting because he is a top free agent and his name is John Gargano. So John has always been called Johnny, since the beginning of time anyway. So I don't know how this trademark will be utilized if Johnny Gargano goes to another promotion. But WWE does have a full trademark for wrestling and entertainment purposes. It's going to be interesting to see how this situation unfolds with Johnny Gargano, or John Gargano. Now, we've talked about trademarks of talent still with the company, trademarks of talent no longer with the company, but what about talent that is no longer with us? Does Vince trademark when talent has passed on? Or does he leave that for the families if they wanted them? The answer is absolutely. Vince will not hesitate to keep renewing trademarks of those no longer with us, as long as there's money to be made off of them. Eddie Guerrero is a prime example. Many thought that the name would by now be in the ownership of maybe Vicky Guerrero or the family, but that's simply not the case. It's WWE that has full ownership and continues to utilize that trademark to this very day. Now, someone like Chris Benoit, on the other hand, well, WWE wants no part of that name, and it's been abandoned for years. Now, before we wrap up, I have to talk about one of the most outrageous trademark situations and stories I've ever stumbled upon, and that's Hulk Hogan. This one fascinates BC. It fascinates many that know about the story, as obviously Terry Bollea is Hulk's real name. Thus, how after all of this time and this many years has Vince not been able to get that name? Well, you'd have to go all the way back to the early to mid-'80s when Hogan was just starting to get red hot. He was known as the Incredible Hulk Hogan. There was just one major problem. Marvel Comics already had the Incredible Hulk. Marvel watched on as Hulk's popularity grew and eventually stepped in and said enough. Before filing a lawsuit, McMahon, Hogan, and Marvel were somehow, unthinkably, able to reach a deal. Now, the deal was for 20 years, and it allowed Hogan to use the name so long as, one, he can no longer be Incredible, because that was the Hulk. So they switched Incredible and they made him the Immortal Hulk Hogan. But that was because Marvel was not going to allow the word Incredible in front of Hulk's name. Number two, Marvel receives, get this, this is fucking incredible. Marvel receives $100 for every time Hogan wrestles a match. $100 for the next 20 years. Marvel gets. I'm sure with inflation and over the years seeing what happened with the dollar and economy, I'm sure they would have liked to raise that 100 to at least 1,000 a match. But back then, I'm sure they were going to get a great deal. They saw this dude's popularity. They knew he was going to wrestle at least another 10 years probably. Give me $100 every time he wrestles. And on top of that, he must be tagged with the Marvel label. All the merchandise that is going to be sold with Hogan's name, it must be tagged with that Marvel label. So they were going to get marketing out of this. So they're not even in the wrestling business, and you're going to see that Marvel tag on all of the top superstars' name in that company. I mean, that's pretty fucking brilliant, actually. Now, would a lawsuit up front have garnered them more money? Maybe, but then you would lose the attention that Hulk Hogan can bring Marvel. I don't know, man. It's just one of those situations that is the most unimagined. You can't even think that this would be a thing back then, but Marvel actually cut a deal with Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan. It is alleged that Hogan told McMahon that he would cover all expenses to be distributed to Marvel. In doing this, Hogan would be more in control over his name than McMahon. Now, we don't know if that's by design or it just happened to be that way. By taking responsibility for your name and paying money out of pocket, you're actually taking more ownership than Vince had. So this would explain why Hogan has always been able to keep his name and always been able to be the first to just renew every 10 years. Despite it coming from Vince, that name was actually given, or the fucking Hogan name was actually McMahon because he wanted a big-time Irish wrestler, and he didn't think Baleo was gonna cut it. So Hogan was put in place because he wanted that Irish feel. Hence, you have Terry Bollea become Hulk Hogan. Anyway, Hogan's been able to keep that name ever since. I don't know. I had to end this on a light note and a good laugh. Marvel and Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan doing business and allowing it. If they said no, if they put on a lawsuit, just like WWF, the World Wildlife Foundation or Fund, whatever that is, they went and they took Vince McMahon to court over the WWF name and they won, and that had to become WWE. Well, you got to believe that Marvel would have won this, man. And Hulk Hogan, who knew that long ago how big that decision was? Hulk Hogan, that name is part of what made him so special. I mean, I could not think of this guy as like a Bob Thompson or a Freddie Freeloader or a Corn on the Cob Carl or a Marty McWhatTheFuck. You know, I mean, you look at Hulk Hogan and he's Hulk Hogan. Who would have thought decades ago that we owe the credit to Marvel for allowing that to happen? Marvel could have honestly just sent out a lawsuit and that would have pretty much been it. Hogan would have been Bob Thompson or Freddie Freeloader. Or maybe he would have been Corn on the Cob Carl. Marty McWhatTheFuck. Who knows? But, I mean, this is the same guy who produces Bearcats. This is the same guy who had Bastion Boogers. This is the guy who had Duke the Dumpster Drosy. Or Doink. Doink the Clown. You never know with Vinnie Mac. You know, you got the Isaac Yankums. You sure as hell could have had Hogan being Freddie Freeloader. I don't know. All right, man. Thank you for joining BC Amplified, man, on this unique type of a video. As a content creator, these are the type of projects that I really get passionate about. So every now and again, I like to produce these type of videos. I know it's kind of against what I usually produce and put out for you guys, but I thank you for giving me the opportunity and chance to do that. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it, because again, as a content creator, these are my passion projects where I get to really jump into the history books, do a lot of research, educate myself even more on subjects that I maybe didn't know a lot about, break down that fourth wall, go behind the curtain, and really jump into the pro wrestling world in a whole different aspect. That's what being a content creator is about, man, and that's where I have the most fun. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, man. Until next time, BC Amplified, and I'm out. Check you.